mid.
They cut it short last year. Grab his license. They cut it short in 3 inches. It was like 2.5. Then you got white color.
Glad they did. I was able to make it.
That's a little short.
Yeah. As soon as we're done with lunch, I'm headed there.
Everyone understood me?
Yeah. Phone's on the trash can. My phone's on the trash can. On the trash can. Keep it on the airplane mode because it'll ring.
I'll put in your desk.
Then I'll get you. Yes, the month. Where's
guys doing? All right, good morning. Great to be back in Central Florida. We're here at FHP, and we're going to be discussing some of the stuff that they've been doing in particular to really lead the nation on enforcing laws against illegal immigration. And there's no agency in the country that's done more than they have over these last 6 months in particular, but even before that. Today in the state of Florida, I've declared to be Hulk Hogan Appreciation Day. And in recognition of somebody who was obviously a major figure for many, many decades, particularly for people in my generation, was a big guy, and was right there in the Tampa Bay area for many, many decades. So all I'll tell you is make sure on this day that you're training, saying your prayers, and eating your vitamins, brother, because he would have wanted you to do that. We're joined by the Florida Cabinet, the entire Florida Cabinet. Attorney General James Uthmeyer, Chief Financial Officer Blaise Angolia, and Florida Agriculture Commissioner Wilton Simpson. And I want to thank them for being here and what they're doing. And they've all been very helpful on Florida's nation-leading efforts to combat illegal immigration. And Blaise is just now a Chief Financial Officer within the last couple of weeks, but as a state Florida Senator, he was leading the charge on your behalf to do what the voters wanted us to do, which is to take care of this problem and not pass the buck anymore. So, and he just got into office. He's leading our DOJ audits of local governments, including Orange County, as well as Gainesville, Broward, Manatee. There's a bunch that are in the hopper, and I think it's really, really important to be doing those. You know, Florida, we have the second lowest amount of spending per capita of any state in the country. We've more than tripled our rainy day fund. We've actually maxed out our rainy day fund. I'm not constitutionally allowed to put any more into the rainy day fund because we've maxed it out. We've also been able to, at the end of this fiscal year, we will have retired close to 50% of Florida's debt. Over its 180-year history, we'll have paid down 50% just since the time I was governor. But yet, you know, we're still doing DOJ stuff on our own state agencies and particularly our state universities. And I think that's really important. You can always do better. But clearly, a lot of taxpayers have seen property taxes. They're paying more in property taxes than they ever have. And so where's that money going? You know, we hear certain things, but then we see other things. So that's going to be really, really good. So thank you for doing that, Blaise. I know it's an important mission. We're also joined by our Executive Director of the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, which of course FHP is included in, Dave Kerner. We do have our Director of the Florida Highway Patrol, Colonel Gary Howes, here. And then we have the fearless Larry Keefe, who's the Executive Director of the Florida State Board of Immigration Enforcement. And all I can tell you is for folks in DHS and in the federal establishment who are, you know, really trying to do the right thing, they're trying to implement the president's policies. It's not always that easy, particularly after the 4 years. But none of them can move as fast as Larry, and he's always pushing the envelope to get the job done, particularly when it comes to immigration enforcement. We do have some of our state reps. You know, I saw Barnaby, Placencia, Bankson. Who else do we have? Is Rachel Plakin here? I thought I may have seen her. Okay, good. Well, thank you guys for being here. So we have said, you know, when I became governor, we said we are not a sanctuary state, and we're not going to allow sanctuary cities. So one of the biggest pieces of legislation I signed my first year was to ban sanctuary cities in the state of Florida. It should have been done before. It hadn't have been, and so we leaned in and got that done. And I know Blaise Angolia was a big help with doing that. Now, that year, 19 and 20, was a little easier because under Trump 45, if you had somebody that we picked up, particularly through our justice system, you know, they were happy to take them and repatriate them to their home countries. Biden came in and things changed dramatically. He opened the border, and interior enforcement really collapsed with respect to illegal immigration. So we saw what was happening at the border, and people act like, oh, just let those border communities just deal with it. It doesn't affect anyone else. That is the furthest thing from the truth. That open southern border affected the entire country, and I think everybody saw that in pretty short order. So we were the first state to launch in to help Texas back in 2021 with what was happening at the southern border. And so our Operation Lone Star deployed more than 1,000 guardsmen, national and state, as well as state law enforcement, including Florida Highway Patrol, to Texas to help stop what was happening at the southern border. It's interesting. You had those communities flooded, but then people going everywhere. And our guys would apprehend when they're coming in. They say, where are you looking to go? And a lot of them were looking to go to Florida. Because you remember, everyone wanted to be in Florida. You didn't want to be in San Francisco then. I was locked down for COVID. You had homeless, all this stuff. So people were naturally doing it, including those folks coming across the border. And so we obviously knew that'd be it's a huge issue for our state. So we have to do it. And, you had a lot in the media that were like, you're not a border state. Why do you care? Well, no, we do care because it's a national problem. And even if it didn't directly affect Florida, even if none of the illegals wanted to come to Florida, we, as the third largest state in the country, we support the sovereignty of this country. We support having enforceable borders. That's a good thing to have as an American. So we were happy to be involved in that. And isn't it interesting? Yet a lot of the people, they didn't care about what was happening at the border. What happened when we sent 50 to Martha's Vineyard? All of a sudden, it was like panic time to have 50. And they called out the National Guard, and they redeployed them. They got them off that island very quickly. And that's what happened. So, and then you started seeing busing to New York City and Chicago and this, and they didn't like that very much. So obviously this was going to have an impact across the country, and we stepped up, and the FHP was a big part of that. We also launched Operation Vigilant Sentry because we saw that, particularly with instability in like Haiti and some of these places, people want to get on these boats and they want to show up on the shores of Florida. And under Biden, once they got to the shore, he didn't do anything really to them. So that really handicapped us. And so we said, you know what? The Coast Guard's out there. Honestly, the Coast Guard does work hard at this. There wasn't enough Coast Guard presence to stop all these boats. So we surged our maritime resources. And since we've done that, we've had more than 19,000 illegal aliens that have been interdicted by the state's efforts. That's in addition to everything that the feds and the Coast Guard and all of them stop. And that includes more than 470 vessels that just our folks under our operation were able to stop. And when you see some of these folks, they'll be with contraband. You got firearms, you got narcotics, you've got all this stuff. Why would we want a band of 15 Haitians armed showing up on the shores of Florida? Obviously, I don't think that that's a good thing. Incidentally, I had a tussle with the Speaker of the House and some of the legislators earlier this year on immigration, because I said President Trump's coming into office, we need to be full throttle in support, and we need to get this done with the deportations. They actually passed a bill that I vetoed that would have terminated Operation Vigilant Sentry. And so those illegals on those boats would have been able to pour in to this country. And, Blaze was one of the ones that was standing with you on that. But I vetoed that legislation. And the legislation we eventually got in was able to supplement what we were already doing, which I think is really, really significant. But just keep in mind, all this was done under a state of emergency for immigration, similar to what President Trump has done federally. And if you terminate that and you take the power away from the governor to be able to do any immigration enforcement, you have no maritime interdictions. Obviously, the southern border, that's not an issue anymore because that's been taken care of, I think, very well. But all the stuff we're doing interior, above and beyond what we would do just in the normal course of law enforcement, requires that authority. We did do the transport program. Obviously, a lot of people remember Martha's Vineyard, and that really helped open the eyes of, I think, a lot of people around the country that this is a major problem. But, there was New York City, Chicago, California. There was a lot of stuff going on, and those are sanctuary jurisdictions. And so they say they're sanctuary jurisdictions, but then they don't like when folks are being funneled there. And so it's interesting how that works out. We've also done a lot of strong legislation. We have enacted, finally, E-Verify legislation for legal workforce. We also made sure that there would be no IDs issued to illegal aliens in the state of Florida. Now, we don't do driver's licenses for illegals. We would never do that. But local governments wanted to issue IDs, not drivers, but IDs. Even nonprofits wanted to do it, and we said, no, we're not going to do that. And we don't recognize IDs issued by sanctuary states like California. So if you're illegally here, they issue you an ID. You come here, we won't do it. And that's the thing. If you don't want illegal immigration, then you can't provide any type of benefits to illegal immigration. That's one of the reasons we worked hard to get rid of in-state tuition at our colleges for illegals. That was instituted before I became governor. That's an incentive for people to want to be in the country illegally. ID cards and benefits are incentives. So we've worked really hard to police that, and I think we've done that better than any other state in the country. Now, that's all great, all the stuff that we did leading up. But when the Trump administration was getting ready to take office, we knew we had an opportunity to be huge partners in the efforts of actually seeing our laws enforced, actually restoring the country's sovereignty. And that, yes, that involves the southern border, and fortunately they're able to handle that at the federal level without needing the support of states like Florida. But then what about the interior of the country and all the things that's happened over these many years with millions and millions plowing in? Even people that come in on like a visa and stay, there's huge problems that come with all this stuff. So what tools do we have? Well, there's a program, a federal program called 287G, and Biden basically mothballed it when he was in for 4 years. But what it does is it allows ICE to delegate to state and local law enforcement the authority to perform specified immigration functions under the agency's direction and oversight. And so people will say you have federal, the immigration's federal, and that's true. But shouldn't states be able to supplement that? And of course they should be able to. And so this provides a framework to be able to do that. So ICE operations can partner with our state and local agencies to identify and remove both criminal aliens and run-of-the-mill illegal aliens that are in our communities. So to date, more than 1,800 Florida Highway Patrol troopers have completed their 287G training and have received their credentials. We have more than 100 FHP troopers that have been sworn in as Deputy U.S. Marshals, which gives them the ability to execute federal search warrants on the worst of the worst in terms of illegals that are in our state. We also have active 287G agreements with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Fish and Wildlife, and the Florida State Guard, and we've even expanded into some of our regulatory spaces. Now, because of the legislation I signed earlier this year, we required participation of all local and state agencies. State agencies is easy because I will just tell them, hey, you got to do it, let's do it, and they were eager to do it. Mark Glass at FDLE, Dave Kerner, they were ready, willing, and able to do it. Didn't have to twist their arm. That wouldn't have been true with every local, municipal, or county law enforcement agency. That's just the fact. They are all have a duty under the law to participate, and that means all 67 counties have signed agreements through their sheriff's department with the 287G program, and many, many municipalities have done the same. It's interesting with FHP and kind of all they've done. They were doing a lot with the border. They were doing a lot to help mitigate the damage Biden was doing here interior. But with Biden, you could have illegal alien get in a car accident, and if ICE wouldn't accept, then there was nothing they can do on the immigration front because they didn't have the authority to act on their own. Now they're able to do that, and they can work seamlessly with the federal government. So it's really, really positive to have that type of relationship. But because they're doing all this, and really in many respects are the tip of the sphere, I called for a big pay increase for FHP this year in the budget, and we had to fight for that, but we were able to deliver the largest pay increase in the agency's history in the budget I signed at the end of June. So I was happy to be able to do that. I think, one, and we want to do that to be able to retain good people, but we also want to recognize that there's great duties that are being exercised here that are above and beyond what would traditionally be called for in those circumstances. As we're working with the feds, and Larry Keefe's working with them as kind of our liaison, we're like, okay, what do you need, this, that, and the other thing? And everything we were doing was great, but we were able to apprehend illegal aliens faster than the federal government could detain, process, and deport them. And part of that is they just didn't have enough space. Now, we had some of our local facilities. You'd have sheriffs could put some people for somewhere, but that really isn't going to be enough. And so we sprung into action to help with that detention, processing, and deportation part of this, which is at the tail end of when somebody would initially be identified and be apprehended. And so we were able to, federal government asked us to be a part of this. We're doing it. We created the facility, Alligator Alcatraz. Folks are contracted to do that on behalf of the state of Florida, but everything we do is going to be reimbursed by the Department of Homeland Security and the federal government. But we were able to stand that up in like a week. And you now have a situation where you have thousands of folks that can be there for processing and ultimately for removal. And there's this massive airstrip. I don't know, it was built many decades ago, but massive airstrip. They've built, all this stuff. It's all temporary, but they've built it. So you literally could have people, you drive them 2,000 feet, they get on a plane, and then they're gone. So thus far, we've had over 600 that have been deported from Alligator Alcatraz by ICE, and that cadence is starting to rapidly increase. And that's what I've told people. It's like, our interest is to facilitate the removal of illegal aliens. It's not to just, what New York was doing. They were just putting them up in these luxury hotels at your expense. Like, I have no desire to do that. Our detention and processing is all leading into the removal. And so that cadence is important. The more that's there, the more we'll be able to send, or DHS can send. And I've said we're even willing to expand that footprint if we need it to Camp Blanding in Northeast Florida, and maybe even some others. But that's ramping up. I think it's doing good, but we want to see even more into the future. So the need, as I said, was simply because FHP is out there and they're able to interact and they're able to apprehend very quickly and very efficiently. You think about the roadways that are out there. We want safe roadways. We want safe streets. The reality is some of these people that are coming here illegally, they are not trained to drive the way we would do to get a license. They're not licensed drivers in the state of Florida, and you do see a lot of really tragic situations. And we have a state rep in the Florida House of Representatives, Cayenne Michael in Northeast Florida. Her son was killed by an illegal alien driver. And it's just thinking to yourself, it's like, why? This person shouldn't have even been on the streets. It had no right to be driving a car here, and yet they're out there, and now all of a sudden she lost her son. So the number of angel moms that I've met over the years whose son or daughter was killed by an illegal alien driver, it's pretty significant. And it's so unnecessary and so avoidable. So FHP, I guarantee you, with the apprehensions they've already done, I guarantee you they've saved many lives. Because if they weren't out there doing that, it was just a matter of time before you would see maybe traffic, maybe otherwise. You absolutely would have seen lives taken had they not gotten these folks off the street. So far, FHP alone has apprehended, just since we started doing the 287G, they've apprehended almost 3,000 illegal aliens that were then later taken for immigration processing by the Department of Homeland Security. Over 500 of them already had an existing criminal record. They're actually convicted of things. It's like, why are you in the country when you've already been convicted of something, when you never had a right to be here in the first place? Our state troopers have stopped vehicles with illegal aliens that were possessing weapons, fentanyl, as well as large sums of cash, which, having large sums of cash in and of itself, a crime, and good on you if you're able to do that. But when I see it with fentanyl and I see it with narcotics, I think, okay, I know where that money's coming from, right? I mean, it's not like you're just out there working as an accountant 9 to 5. So they've uncovered human smuggling operations that are working deep within our state. Just in the past month, FHP has arrested a member of Tren de Aragua gang, which is a Venezuelan gang designated as a foreign terrorist group right here in Orange County, who had an extensive criminal history and an existing warrant. Up in North Florida in Wakulla County, FHP arrested an illegal alien who is a member of MS-13 gang. In Broward County, they arrested an illegal who's a member of the 18th Street gang from Guatemala, who had 2 prior removals from the United States. I mean, what are we even doing, letting people come in multiple times like that? In Osceola County, they arrested an illegal alien who struck and killed a pedestrian and then fled the scene. Palm Beach County, they arrested an illegal wanted for murder in Guatemala. And in Hernando County, they arrested an illegal who was trafficking 30 pounds of marijuana. Those are just some examples from just the last month of what FHP's been doing. They've also assisted federal partners at Homeland Security and ICE with more than 470 joint operations leading to the arrest of illegal aliens. In April, many of you remember, Florida conducted a statewide Operation Tidal Wave, in conjunction with our federal partners, and that led to the arrest of over 1,100 criminal illegal aliens in 1 week. That's the largest number in a single state in 1 week in the entire history of ICE as an organization. And of those, almost 2/3 had existing criminal records. Now, to further combat the threat of illegal immigration, Florida Highway Patrol is establishing a new immigration unit, the Immigration Enforcement Section within the Bureau of Criminal Investigations and Intelligence, to specialize in immigration enforcement. This team of mission-dedicated troopers will work in close contact with local, state, and federal law enforcement partners to identify, locate, and apprehend criminal aliens across the state. We're proud of the great work that FHP is doing. I want to thank Director Dave Kerner for leading the charge. There's no other state in the country that can match our efforts. In fact, there's no other state that is even in the ballpark of our efforts. And you remember when the president came down to South Florida to tour the alligator facility, he said, and his key people like Stephen Miller said, we need other states to be doing this. You're eligible to have it reimbursed by the federal government, so it isn't like it's going to be a cost on your budget ultimately. It's just the front. And I haven't seen anything else being stood up anywhere around the country. I haven't seen the type of numbers where our folks are intricately involved. And then, of course, the maritime has gotten better because the Coast Guard has more resources dedicated to policing this since President Trump took office, but we're still helping there. Our footprint isn't as big as it was under Biden because, quite frankly, the threats aren't as great as they were under Biden. But we're still engaged in that, and we're still making arrests with that. So this has been, I don't think you've seen any state in the country work more closely with these federal agencies to fulfill a very key mission, a mandate from the American people after the 2024 election to get this job done. So we're showing that it can be done. There's a lot more that's going to happen. I mean, I know that they're going to really do more to stand up the agency a lot better than it had been under Biden. I know they're going to provide more resources for their ability to hold and process and deport folks, and hopefully without even needing it. And people will ask me like, well, you know, why are you involved in this? I'm involved in it because we have to be involved in it. I'm involved in it because if we're not involved in it, it's not going to get done right now. Maybe we'll reach a point as ICE continues to build up where they're going to be able to handle, where all we'll have to do is just let them know, hey, you know, we got a guy, they take him, and then we're not involved anymore, that we don't have to have any type of processing or detention that the state's involved with. I'd be happy with that if that were the case, but that's not where we're at now. So we can sit on our hands and watch the problems not get solved, or we can be part of the solution and help lead the efforts among the states to get the job done. We would not be able to do that without the great work of FHP. I'm glad that we were able to deliver a pay increase. Honestly, it wasn't as much as they deserved, and it wasn't as much as I asked for. So I know we're going to have budget season again next year, and just you can write this down. I am going to be seeking additional pay increase for Florida Highway Patrol. So God bless their efforts, and thanks everybody. Okay, Attorney General.
Hey everyone, Attorney General James Uthmeyer here. I want to thank the governor for his leadership. Florida is the best state in the country to raise a family, and that only happens when public safety is the #1 priority, and that starts at the top. I also want to thank President Trump for securing the border and enforcing the law. We almost lost the country. The left, through the open border policies, they wanted to let everybody in, count them in the census, giving massive electoral power to blue states, try to give people the right to vote where they can. They wanted to change the makeup of our country as we know it. And thank God they weren't able to get away with it. So I commend FHP, I commend our state law enforcement on their efforts to crack down. We've made thousands of arrests. We're going to continue to lead the way, and I'll be right there to have their back. The perils of the open border we continue to see in gut-wrenching fashion every day. Just 2 days ago, my statewide prosecutors were part of a sting in Central Florida that led to the takedown of 48 child predators, all that were on their way to abuse minors. 7 of those individuals were illegals. They'll be under ICE detainers. They'll be sent back where they came from after they serve their time. Just yesterday in Palm Beach County, 2 criminal illegal aliens brutally sexually assaulted a 7-year-old girl. This is what we're dealing with every single day. These are the very real perils of the open border policies. So while the Democrat officials want to sit there outside Alligator Alcatraz and cry because people have to brush their teeth in the same room as a toilet, which is a bathroom, people, real American families, are suffering every single day. And if you're an undocumented person who's not one of those malicious people, you have the opportunity to self-deport, where you can come back in legally through the right channels. But if you don't want to take advantage of that, we're going to detain, we're going to deport, and we're going to deliver for the American people.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Before we start, I want to personally thank every member of the law enforcement who is here today, from the sheriff to the troopers behind me. Thank you for everything that you guys do. And it's because of you guys and the hard work of our governor that we are leading once again when it comes to cracking down on illegal immigration. So everyone in the room, I know this is a press conference, please give a big round of applause to these guys. Want to personally thank this governor for leading on this issue when at some point it wasn't popular, but this governor does not back away from any fight, and neither does our President Donald Trump. I want to thank him for closing the border because, quite frankly, there have been way too many Democrats and Republicans over the years that have not taken the responsibility that they should have to make sure that we crack down on illegal immigration and then fix the broken legal system. We are finally getting to the point where we are being serious and we are creating deterrence so people do not come over our southern border bringing crime, bringing drugs, effectuating human trafficking. That crap has got to stop, and I thank you all for being part of that. The state of Florida is continuing to lead on cracking down on illegal immigration. We are #1 when it comes to people signing up for immigration enforcement under the 287G program. We were one of the first ones to start putting new laws on the books, quite frankly, while the old federal laws were not being followed by the Biden administration. Because let's not forget, the reason why the states had to get involved was because the federal government under the Biden administration adopted a de facto open borders policy that created this whole environment that we're in right now. So every time you hear someone on the left crying about illegal immigration enforcement, let's remind them about the people who have died at the hands of illegal immigrants because they allowed it over the southern border. And to the Democrats who are crying about illegal Alcatraz and the cost, we have always said, Republicans have always said that there is a cost to illegal immigration. There is a human cost, and then there is an actual financial cost. So I don't want to hear anyone talk about the money that we're putting up for Alligator Alcatraz in order to actually deport the criminal illegal aliens and those who are pouring over the border, because I didn't hear them say crap about spending $2 billion on hotel rooms in New York City for illegal immigrants. The American people were clear during this last election. It was a mandate. The #1 issue on everyone's minds was illegal immigration. President Trump understood that, and he is fixing the problem at the southern border. This governor understood that, and he is doing everything that he possibly can to help President Trump. The biggest thing that we can do is create deterrence to make sure that illegal immigrants don't come here. I mean, if you think about what California was doing, California was allowing them, free school, which is federal, I get it. It's free school, free food, food stamps. Heck, they were allowing them to have trans surgeries under the state dime, and they were allowing them to vote in some of these municipalities. Those deterrents that have to stop. So every time when you hear this governor and the legislature who's been doing some good work on this create laws, we are creating the deterrents. And there's no bigger deterrent than these guys behind me. That if they know if they're going to be in our communities, ravaging on communities, committing crimes, they're going to wind up back in their home country through Alligator Alcatraz. Guys, I thank you for everything that you do, and it is a pleasure being here today cracking down on this stuff.
Good morning, and I would like to recognize before I get started some of our agriculture law enforcement. I'm right here on the front row, if y'all will stand up. We didn't get to see him today, but we have a great crew. Thank you, guys. I'd also like to thank the governor. Florida has been blessed for the last 6 years. I served from 2012 to 22 in the Senate, and Florida's been blessed to have this governor. And we're blessed to have your leadership, not only in law enforcement, governor, or illegal immigration or safety issues, but Florida has led this nation in many areas. And of course, that's well documented, whether it's COVID or many issues we've had to deal with in the last 6 years. Ag Law is very proud to be a part of the national security team and the Florida security team that protects us. All of our officers at Ag Law are 287G certified. Under leadership of Colonel Adams, we have intercepted illegals, sex offenders, drug traffickers, and recovered over 200 stolen semi-trailers in just the last few years. Just yesterday, we announced the arrest of 2 illegals, one in Central Florida that was a fuel theft ring that had stolen over $20,000 worth of fuel, and the other one had broken out of a jail, was a Russian illegal immigrant, previously convicted on a sex trafficking sting. So Ag Law has been an amazing force multiplier right alongside our federal, state, and local partners. We've worked with all the sheriffs in this state, and they've done an amazing job. And if you go to their website and look, you'll see every day they are announcing arrests. And we are primarily responsible for that northern border of the state of Florida. We've also been blessed with the legislature and the governor's leadership. We are going to be putting a new interdiction station at 231, a major artery coming in from North Florida. We haven't had that protected. We're also building out pull-out lanes and many of those arterial roads coming in from the north into the state of Florida. The equipment that we're going to have, the canine processes that we're going to do. Thank you to the legislature, thank you to the governor for allowing us to continue to lead not only on our border security issues, but throughout the state of Florida. And our team have made many, many arrests and do not get a lot of the credit for those things. But as a force multiplier, it's been significant here in the state of Florida. And what I'd like to say is, just like our farmers and ranchers, you may not know how much work we do behind the scenes, but you will sure can count on the results. So thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Governor, members of the Cabinet, my name is Dave Kerner. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. And with that appointment, I work on behalf of the Governor and the Cabinet to manage the operations, the day-to-day operations of the Florida Highway Patrol and other divisions of the department. And it is a huge honor to be standing with these men and women behind me, these state troopers. I know some of them personally. I don't know all 2,000 personally, but I know them to be just outstanding, motivated, incredibly hardworking, diligent law enforcement officers. And for me, it has been a blessing of a lifetime to watch this agency get the full value and the full potential under Governor DeSantis' leadership. And these guys are out here kicking butt and they're taking names. I'm born and raised in Florida, and so I've always been a fan of Florida Highway Patrol. But I always thought that if they had the right leadership, they could do so much more for the men and women in this state and our residents. And so under the governor's leadership, we've really seen this agency take on incredibly challenging situations and missions and execute just perfectly on it. So it's such an honor to be here with each and every one of you. And you have our deepest respects for what you guys do each day, day in and day out. And to our members of the Cabinet, to the Attorney General, these troopers see your leadership. They see the way that you're fighting in the court of law for their rights, for their ability to enforce the law. It does not go unnoticed. Blaze, or Chief Financial Officer Blaze Ngoli, you blazed right in, and you've done a hell of a job. You've been here a couple of weeks, and you already have your law enforcement officers getting with ours and getting ready to get to work, doing incredible things. We're excited to have you here on the state of Florida team, on the executive branch. And to the Commissioner, just like with Florida Highway Patrol, sir, I've seen a transformation in your men and women in uniform since you took over. I mean, it must have been a rough couple of years in the last administration, but we've seen what's happened. It's night and day, and we see it. Colonel Howes and our troopers see you all out there on the interstates doing the Lord's work, and we're thankful for your service, and we know that you're risking your lives, and you're right here on the same team. And so it's incredible to see all of our state law enforcement really just have incredible value to this state. Our immigration enforcement section is going to be, I think, first in the nation. I don't think any other state is doing what the state of Florida is doing. And so this unit will be specifically, even though we have 2,000 troopers already out there doing the Lord's work, this unit will be 24/7 coordinating, deconflicting. We're about to have hundreds, if not thousands, of sheriff's deputies and police department officers coming online. This unit will be responsible for coordinating with the federal government and making sure we're maximizing our utility as law enforcement officers to apprehend and deport illegal immigrants. And before this press conference started, we had a chance to huddle up with the governor, and the governor said, say whatever it is you need to say to the public. He kind of took the chains off, as he's known for doing. And so the first thing I wanted to say, which isn't on the script, is Governor Colonel Howes and I and the Florida Highway Patrol had an opportunity to have an awards banquet for the Florida Highway Patrol, where we recognize all the troopers doing a great job. But there was a representative from the Department of Homeland Security that showed up and wanted to make sure that we honored the Florida Highway Patrol. So what I had the honor of receiving on behalf of the Florida Highway Patrol was the first ever Secretary's Commendation given to the Florida Highway Patrol, issued by the Secretary of Homeland Security. This is representative of many things. It's a beautiful certificate, but it's so much more than that. And I want to talk about something that's going down right now in Palm Beach County, and I want to address it head on because the public deserves to know, and quite frankly, candor and being transparent is an important part of leading a law enforcement agency. What this certificate represents is first in the nation 287G, first in the nation to arrest under 287G, almost 3,000 arrests, and the Department of Homeland Security is recognizing them. But each one of those arrests is a story. And right now there was an arrest that happened in Palm Beach County a couple months ago, rather, and the press has run with it from a false narrative, and they're trying to change the history. So I want to address it head on. And I want to talk about a larger issue just very briefly. So these are the facts. This is what happened. A traffic stop happened by the Florida Highway Patrol. They had reasonable suspicion that there were undocumented immigrants in the vehicle. We called for Border Patrol's assistance, as we always do. We always work with our federal partners. It was determined that 2 of the occupants were here unlawfully. Border Patrol directed us to take them into custody. What happens thereafter is that a U.S. citizen starts to interfere and obstruct the investigation by slamming the door shut and locking the doors so that the troopers and the Border Patrol cannot access these undocumented aliens and bring them into custody. Of course, the troopers did exactly what they're supposed to do. They arrested that U.S. citizen for obstruction of justice under 843.02 Florida state statutes. Time goes on. In fact, the resistance was so severe, by the way, that the Border Patrol had to use a taser on one of the subjects. Time goes on. The suspect that we arrested, who's a U.S. citizen, went through the court system as he should. He pled to the misdemeanor charge of resisting. He agreed to anger management, for one, and community service, and pled out on the misdemeanor charge. And what has transpired since then, I guess because the media has made a debacle of this, saying that it was a miscarriage of justice, is that the prosecutor in Palm Beach County unilaterally, after this plea was done, okay, this plea is signed by the state attorney, it's signed by the defendant, it's signed by the attorney for the defendant, and when I say it's signed by the state attorney, it's the assistant state attorney, the prosecutor, and they all agreed this is what happened and this is what the punishment should be. And I'm speaking as a former prosecutor. This is what due process looks like, and a defendant doesn't plead to a criminal charge unless they're aware that they've done it and they should pay the price. So what happens is the press comes out and calls it a miscarriage of justice, and unilaterally, now several months later after this arrest, the prosecutor in Palm Beach County goes and tears this agreement up and dismisses the charges and says he doesn't have to be held accountable. That is a miscarriage of justice. What this represents to me is an experience that I had recently in Tampa, where one of our sergeant troopers was doing the Lord's work. I was actually out on that operation. He pulled a vehicle over, and 12 illegal immigrants fled across I-4, and he went and chased them and had to jump over a wall and ended up demolishing his leg. And he's gone through 3 surgeries already, and he's out of work. He's obviously on leave. But he's been seriously injured because these folks resisted arrest. And this person resisted arrest and caused the Border Patrol to have to use a taser to get these people into custody. And the law applies equally whether you're here legally, whether you're a U.S. citizen, or whether you're here illegally. And for a prosecutor, which my only assumption, the only inference that I can draw that they canceled this, that they dropped this charge after a plea, which I've never heard of happening, is because it involved illegal immigration. And I hear politicians say just the craziest things about what happened and how we can do better as a country. No, the prosecutor can do better. The prosecutor cannot encourage people resisting arrest. These men and women have a right to conduct their investigations in a peaceful environment. And when people obstruct or interfere with that process, it's not just the state troopers and our ag officers and deputy sheriffs that get hurt. Other people get hurt too. And so this is a miscarriage of justice, and I'm delighted to be able to talk about this in front of the governor and our attorney general and our cabinet. And this is happening simultaneously, by the way. I got a call from the chief of police of West Palm Beach, Tony Araujo, And he called me, he said, "Dave, you won't believe what just happened, who we just arrested." It was the 2 illegal immigrants that raped a 7-year-old repeatedly, I think over 12 times, and also mentioned to me that they used a belt to discipline her because she was acting out. And so I think in the state of Florida, the governor's made it pretty clear that this is a law and order state. And this may be a one-off where you're telling the public that it's okay to resist when immigration is involved, and it's not. And if this continues, it's certainly above my pay grade. But I do not think it's going to end well for that prosecutor. I think she should be focused on obtaining the death penalty sentence for these 2 illegal aliens that raped a 7-year-old repeatedly. I think that's what she should be focusing her time on. Last thing I'll say, Governor, and this is an honest, true story. Last night I was driving home. I was thinking about this press conference, and the song "Write This Down" came on by George Strait. And you had mentioned earlier, write this down, about the pay raises for these troopers and these officers. So I wrote it down, right out of George Strait. And what you've done and what these leaders have done, what the legislature in this last session has done, is monumental. I know there's a desire to go further. Whether that happens or not, I know that I speak on behalf of Colonel Howes and these state troopers that we will always be honored to engage in these missions that we're assigned, and will do with diligence and integrity. Thank you, Governor.
So, I did say write this down on the pay increases, and we did deliver. We'll do more next year. But you're also going to have an opportunity, in keeping with the George Strait theme, with respect to property tax, if you want to vote yourself relief on November 2026 ballot, you'll be able to check yes or no. It'll be up to you. So next.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis. Also our cabinet, Attorney General James Uthmeyer, Blaise Ngole, our CFO, and Commissioner Simpson. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support of Florida law enforcement. It's unprecedented, I think, in the country. It's why Florida is considered the most law enforcement friendly state. But specifically, Governor DeSantis, thank you for your unwavering support of your Florida Highway Patrol troopers. Thank you. Florida Highway Patrol has remained steadfast in answering the call for the many pressing challenges of illegal immigration. While the governor and others have highlighted many accomplishments Florida has achieved while working as a coordinated team, I want to take a few minutes to give you the perspective of a trooper. The men and women that are truly on the front lines every day engaging illegal immigration on our roadways. Every day, every shift, 24/7. Each day, as a trooper, we put on our uniform, our duty belt, we step away from the comfort of our home and our loved ones, our family, and we step away to confront risks, the risks in the service to protect Floridians. But not just Floridians. We also have an estimated 143 million annually legal visitors to Florida. To note, Florida is one of the most sought-out places to go, not just in the country, but in the world. And these men and women are out making sure our roads are as safe as they can be as they all travel here. Our troopers train months and months and then continue training throughout their career, preparing for unpredictable and being in harm's way. They train for that. And now, as a result of the previous border crisis, our mission has to be expanded like never before. We're protecting a state and America from the consequences of unchecked illegal immigration. Our troopers are not just tasked with policy changes and enforcement, they face head-on the very real threat of public safety as a result of illegal immigration associated with the criminality associated with everything that comes with it, which has been noted earlier. Amongst the millions that have entered our country illegally, there are individuals with the intent to exploit, to harm, and to undermine the well-being of law-abiding American citizens. The reality of a Florida law enforcement officer is this: their life is going to be threatened by dangerous gang members. Their work is going to be criticized, distorted, and by some media masqueraded as journalists, twisted. Your name is going to be publicized and slandered in an effort to shame and humiliate your commitment to serve. Your family, your loved ones, they may be doxxed, targeted, and threatened because of your calling to help others. We've had to adopt and be proficient with new systems, new reporting requirements, and new operational expectations. Yet, our public safety mission remains. We embrace the reality that the majority of American citizens, and especially Floridians, they count on us to fulfill our duty. Florida law enforcement must do all of this on top of our core mission responsibilities, such as engaging and stopping reckless criminals, threatening innocent motorists, running up and down our highways, pursuing those fleeing from justice, executing state and federal warrants, and responding to the always evolving disturbances of the day that impede the welfare and the safety of innocent others. This is what the Florida Highway Patrol does every day. Not only have we answered the call for our expanding immigration enforcement responsibilities, we will never turn a blind eye to criminals or illegal behavior. And we will continue to meet the public expectation to provide professional and efficient law enforcement services. We're proud of and we're thankful for the trust put into us by our federal law enforcement partners, and remain fully committed to protect them and their families from doxing and criminal harassment. They're more than just partners to us, they're part of us. Florida is a law and order state, and we will not tolerate lawlessness. We will not stand back from our duty. I'd like to provide a message to our troopers here, our troopers that may be listening, and really law enforcement in general. Thank you. Thank you for your selfless service to our state and our nation. You are Florida's finest, and I'm proud to serve as a trooper alongside you. Know that your elected leadership here today, they have your back. They have your back as you carry out your most important mission of our time. So thank you for what you do, and please be safe. Thank you.
It's an honor to be the cleanup hitter today. Governor, very quickly, I'm going to direct my attention over here a lot to Director Kerner and to Colonel Howes of the Florida Highway Patrol, because today is largely about recognition of their organization and their role in this mission, the mass deportation mission, the largest deportation in history. And the governor recounted, because in a minute I'm going to talk a little bit about back in the Biden administration, some stories that are emblematic of what this organization and its leadership are about. When President Trump came into office and he declared a national emergency, which a lot of people often forget that we are in an emergency. You declared one in January of 2023 when we had the maritime invasion. But it's not ordinary time. It's not regular order. President Trump comes into office, declares a national emergency, orders the borders secured to restore our national sovereignty in 7 weeks, done, effectively done in 7 weeks. And then he says engage in the largest mass deportation that's ever occurred in history. And he knew at the time that he did that the federal capabilities, the resources, the material, all the stuff you need to do stuff on a grand scale, they didn't have it. They had to rely on the states. They had to rely on local law enforcement. They had to rely on these force multipliers to make this thing happen. And in a second, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing where and now and your critical role in that process. But let me take you back in time to the Biden administration, where I spent a good amount of time at the border at the direction of the governor, assessing the situation and figuring out what we could do, because we were basically kind of fighting a battle or a war against our own country. Our own country had given up on its sovereignty and opened the borders, and there was no law and order, and all of the badness that accompanies that, drugs, human trafficking, sex trafficking, all that bundle of badness was coming in, and the leadership in this state, that many of whom are sitting right here in front of us, we're going to do whatever we could. We weren't going to say, that's the immigration. It's a federal thing. We're going to just take care of business in our state of Florida. We did everything we could. Spent a lot of time out there in the border. The governor sent and arranged to send the Florida National Guard, other state law enforcement agencies to help Texas, to help the border states secure the border, to repel the invasion. So while we're out there, everybody's kind of facing externally or outward. These highway patrol guys are very interested in forming relationships with law and order sheriffs, particularly in these sanctuary states along the southwest border. and they start moving in a few counties talking to these sheriffs that are islands, they're alone, these law and order sheriffs that want to protect the people in their county from this immigration invasion. So in addition to being on the border with the Highway Patrol looking outward, these guys are trying to find a way to help with the problem with the law and order sheriffs inside the country. So they did. They had already developed with the Florida Highway Patrol interdiction methods and techniques here in Florida, because even though they knew when they would catch them and they would call ICE, although ICE badly wanted to arrest them, they had been ordered by the Biden administration to let them go. But they developed the skills, they developed the techniques, they developed the strategies to do that. And then they brought these sheriffs in these blue states, in these sanctuary states, these on their own little islands to Florida to train them, to bring them here. The Florida Sheriffs Association hosted them at their annual convention. And we brought in, and there was national leadership demonstrated where there was none nationally. And Governor DeSantis and you all stepped up and took care of business. And that is where I first had got my eyes on these guys. They have the right mindset. They have the right culture. They don't sit around in offices. They make things happen. Biden administration ends. President Trump comes in. We pick up the story where I was before. Time to step up. First thing I do, second day on the job, I go to Washington to say, the DHS headquarters, ICE headquarters, and I said, I'm here on behalf of you all and you, Governor, because you all in the Florida legislature have determined this is the state's highest priority. We are lockstep with President Trump. You can't do it without us, and we're going to be your best state. And we've got some guys who I took with me up there on my first visit and said, these are the guys that are going to do it. They know how to do it, and they're the ones that know their state like the back of their hand, every road, every nook, every cranny. They're not limited to county jurisdictions like a sheriff is. They are statewide. They go anywhere. They have complete authority, and they have the right mindset. So we came back. We went to work. You all were the first in the country to have the 287G. Your director has badge number 1. He has badge number 1, and his folks for the last 6 months have been on the roads of Florida. They know how to do it. They have the methods. They have the strategies. They have the techniques. They have the tactics. And there's 1,800 or so of them that have been doing this for 6 months. Within the last week, I think the numbers within the last week, we had last week 1,200 sheriff deputies that are now online. We had 650 FDLE agents that are now online. Other state agencies, Commissioner Simpson, your organization is online. And so what you have seen for the last 6 months, that's the best in the country, it's a warm-up. It is just a warm-up. And so now these strike teams that you're talking about with this new unit is going to have on it sheriff deputies that nobody knows their counties like a sheriff. You're going to have other state law enforcement agencies. You're going to have the Highway Patrol folks. Now that the detention capacity, the work that you've done and that you all have done on the detention capacity, we're no longer capped at that, where we're having to modulate and kind of tone down the effort that we're applying. So I think it's going to skyrocket. It's going to take off. Now, whenever I make remarks about what my overall view is of the find, sort, detain, deport process, much of the amazing credit goes to Kevin Guthrie, the Division of Emergency Management, the Florida National Guard, for increasing this detention capacity. That's fundamental, that's key and essential. And Kevin Guthrie, the Director of Emergency Management that everybody knows from hurricanes and all that, and his work on Alligator Alcatraz, is due credit. And he is amazing. He is an international star in the setting of making things happen in mass and scale. Well, so are these folks, and your organization and this leadership right now. So you all created the blueprint, initial blueprint of how a law and order state fights the battle. Governor, you commissioned and sent out the Florida Blueprint 1.0 back in May that had in it this thing that is now Alligator Alcatraz, the blueprint of how you do this, how state and local help the federal government accomplish the mass immigration enforcement mission. So this organization and your organization, we're ready for 2.0. Once you give us the green light, we're ready to talk about 2.0 because the situation is fluid, it's adapted, we've learned lots of lessons, and we are ready to have Blueprint 2.0 of how you do this, how you scale this. And as the President said after 2 weeks ago, Florida, great job, you've crushed it. Now go forth and help us show these other states how to do it. We're ready to do it.
Okay. Well, thanks again for everybody that's been involved. I mean, I know we got a lot more work to do, but if you compare Florida to other states in terms of who's taken this really seriously, and not just with rhetoric, but with action. We're second to none. As usual on a lot of the stuff, we're happy to step up and get things done. So we've done a lot. These guys behind me have done a lot. FHP's done a lot, but there is a lot more to do. I'd also just remind people that today is the start of our back-to-school sales tax-free month of August now. So every August in Florida, we made it permanent. You'll have the entire month of August to stock up on those school supplies. And incidentally, yesterday we were, I was home in the afternoon after come back from the office. And my wife's like, yeah, I'm gonna go do school shopping. The kids are gonna probably want me to come. I'm like, no, you're not. She's like, what? I'm like, you can't shop for school on July 31st when we have the August 1st. Oh, you're right. And so she's gonna be, we're gonna be doing that in the next few days. But we're at the point in the summer. So our kids get out Memorial Day. I know a lot of schools do. Some go a little later. And it's like, okay, school year done, have a little fun, and then they do activities in the summer, different types of camps, whatever. Well, now we're kind of at the point where mom and dad are like, when does school start again? Can we get that going? So that's coming up in a couple weeks, and we're going to be happy that will happen. There's other things that you may miss a little bit over the summer, but after the first month, fine. After the second month, it's like, all right, we've got to get going back into the routine here. So we're both of us are cautiously looking forward to the beginning of the school year. And then just they mentioned Kevin Guthrie. I would just remind people we are in hurricane season. If you look like at the Atlantic now, there's not much going on. A lot of people are saying, because the media says every time it's going to be the worst ever, right? And so a lot of people, they hate when that stuff happens because, the media said 30 years ago Florida would be completely underwater by now, right, because of global warming. So you see this stuff. So I think there's a natural reaction because people are, if they see someone trying to scare them, they're just going to say, so like people are now looking, it's been uneventful, whatever. But we're just now getting into where you would have more rapid a chance of this happening as you get into mid-August. So it looks pretty clear for the immediate future, but as you start to get into mid-August, and then September is always very difficult, and then the beginning of October as well, you can have a quiet hurricane season until it's not. And if you go back to 2022, at this point we're like, yeah, it's been quiet. Just keep to yourself. August was quiet in 2022. Then we get into the first week of September, nothing. The second week of September. And then people really started chirping, nothing to see. And I knew as soon as that started happening, I just felt like, okay, buckle up. And then sure enough, the end of September, we got Hurricane Ian, which was, one of the biggest hurricanes that we've had in this country in the last 10 years. So we don't know that, and you can have a very modest or even weak overall season, but it only takes one to impact communities. And so, yes, we haven't had much. I know it's been very hot. We haven't had much in the way of that activity relative to maybe what some of the predictions were thus far, but we are far from prime time for this. It's kind of like, maybe being in like the third inning. So just continue to do whatever. The back-to-school holiday is great for August. Disaster supplies are now permanently tax-free. So you can still do that. You've got plenty of time to do that. And hopefully you won't need it. Hopefully you guys won't see people like Kevin Guthrie on your TV a lot throughout the balance of this hurricane season. But we obviously plan and are ready to act if need be. Okay, do we got any questions? Well, look, we have laws in Florida. I fought very hard. The Attorney General was our chief of staff then, and he was fighting very hard to say that we have to impose a duty, an enforceable duty on states and you didn't need to do it on the state, but we wanted to because I was going to do it anyway. But on the localities to participate with this effort, because if you didn't do it, you would obviously have a lot that wouldn't do it. So that's just the obligations that have been provided under law. And we expect everybody to fulfill their obligations under law, and both the Florida Constitution provides me, but then that legislation also provided supplemental authority so that the governor can ensure enforcement and that those duties are upheld. And I won't hesitate to do it, but I would just tell people, because I get like not everybody wants to see immigration laws enforced. Not everybody wants to see illegal aliens removed. Most do, and when you see that happen, and then you see less traffic problems, less stress on healthcare and schools, people really are appreciative when that happens. But I know that's not 100%. But the reality is we had that debate in Florida. I had to fight a couple leaders of my own party in the House to get where we are, but we landed it. And now that's the law, and so just follow it, and I think you're going to find that that's going to be the best way forward for everybody.
Would you have suspended him if he had not signed it?
If you don't meet your obligations under the law, if you don't fulfill the duties that have been imposed upon you, you absolutely will be suspended. Now, I know the Attorney General wrote him a letter, all this stuff. The reality is I just want to get it right. I just want to land the plane right, and so I'm glad it worked out that way. But this is just something that we're watching. And Dave Kerner brought up Palm Beach County state attorney and what may have happened on this thing. I just know we watch those things too. Now, I don't just shoot from the hip. I mean, people build a record, and the people can present a record to me, and I look to make sure that our duties are there, because we know people are going to sue off this and try to drag it up in court. Although we won the suit that we did in Tampa when we had that, and eventually were able to settle that fine. But that's just what happens. So, but on the prosecutors, you have an obligation to uphold the law and enforce the law. And while an individual case, there's judgment calls that can be made, you can't have a policy that has the effect of kneecapping what the people have enacted through the legislature, because that puts the public at risk, and we don't want to see that happen. And I was speaking to the sheriffs the other day. We've seen in like California where you can go in and steal $950, and the threshold is a little higher than that, and they raise this threshold. So you see massive crime wave. You've seen jailbreak legislation in some of these states. Like, none of that is going to work. I've obviously opposed that very strongly in terms of legislative, even though you've had people that have tried to do that in Florida. But you certainly can't do that through the back door. Like, you didn't get the jailbreak legislation passed. You didn't get some of the California-style policies enacted. So you're just going to do it anyways, unilaterally? No, that doesn't work.
Governor, can we get your reaction on the ICE recruitment letter for our deputies and police officers that went out?
So I haven't seen the letter, but apparently ICE sent out a recruitment letter to, a lot of people that are 287G qualified that are working in local agencies in Florida and even some state agencies, and are dangling like a lot of bonus money and all this other stuff. And I know some sheriffs have had concerns, that's happening. It's like, hey, we've been doing all this stuff to help you guys, and now you're trying to poach our people who are already in the fight. Why not recruit additional people to be supplementing that instead of just kind of displacing? So I know a lot of sheriffs have had concerns about it. I think maybe some police chiefs. So I would just say, stay tuned on kind of them. I mean, that's really something that's going to impact them more than probably us at the state level. And I know that there's some sheriffs that have some strong feelings about it.
Governor, I know you encourage and required sheriffs to sign this 287G agreement and to get these deputies trained to have immigration enforcement authority. Now this is happening. What would you say to those law enforcement leaders that trusted you and the state to sign this agreement, and now they're concerned about their deputies being poached?
Well, I think that's the conundrum, right? Because we've gone above and beyond as a state. All these sheriff's departments and many police departments have done these agreements. They have folks that have now been certified or in the process still of doing that. And that's been a huge help to ICE, right? Let's just be clear. That's been a huge benefit to those federal agencies. And so now if you're in a situation where those folks are being poached off of that mission, well, it's like, wait a minute, how is that? Why don't you bring in new people to supplement the mission going forward? So I understand the concern. I mean, 100%. I think we've done the right thing. I think we want to continue doing what we're doing. But, sheriffs losing deputies who are in this fight, to just go to wear a different jersey basically, but still be in the fight, that doesn't necessarily add to what we're doing. It's just moving someone over. And so I think there is frustration from that, and so we'll see. But you're going to continue to hear folks talk about this. I know when that letter hit, I heard a lot of static coming out of our sheriff's departments about that. And I told them, I said, listen, you guys got to defend your agencies and your people. I mean, you say fight for what you think is right. I mean, this isn't my policy. It's coming down from ICE, and so by all means, speak up.
Governor, on the back and forth with Orange County for the last week or so, one of the issues that they've brought up is that the transporting costs would be that they would have to pay it. In your view, should counties who participate? So
if you look at the bill that we got into law, there is money through our immigration folks where they can apply for reimbursement. So you do that likely through the sheriff, right, Larry, with the jail and transportation costs.
Yes, sir.
They can get it reimbursed. We can issue the grants and do that. So I would just tell them to do it. Yes, when I was doing this, I had pushed back. I mean, obviously the Speaker of the House opposed what I was putting forth. And one of the things people were saying was, well, this is like an unfunded mandate. I was like, no, it's not going to be unfunded. We will have an ability for you to get resources. And so I think the detention, transport, I mean, that's something that would be appropriate to do. And I know we approved the guidelines for the grants to go out. And so I would just encourage to go talk to Larry, apply for that. But we want to get the funding out the door for the localities. I think that's really important. I think that they'll use it well, and it'll enhance the mission.
You mentioned that there were other sites that could be opened in addition to Alligator Alcatraz and Camp Blanding as future detention sites. Did you have your ie on anywhere in particular?
Well, so Camp Blanding is up in Northeast Florida. It does have an air. It has a runway. I don't know that it would be as equivalent to Alligator Alcatraz because the runway's not as big. You may be able to move people right out of there, but you do have Cecil Field that's very close to that. So when we look at this, it's really what makes logistical sense. Again, I'm not creating the Four Seasons for illegal aliens. I'm not detaining just to detain. Like, that is not what we're doing it because there's a process involved for deport. Even the ones that have had the final order of removal, which is most of the people at Alligator Alcatraz, there still is some process that goes through that. So if it's detain, go through the process, and then be able to remove, that's something that we have an interest in being able to help facilitate to be able to increase those numbers. So I think Blanding would have the capacity to do a couple thousand. We initially were planning on just kind of opening that right away, but what I noticed as it was coming, DHS was sending people to South Florida, but we thought it'd be a little bit more, and then we waited for the flight, and the flights have started, so we want to get a sense of that cadence, I think, because yes, we're getting reimbursed for this, and so any of these people that are complaining about the money, the state's getting reimbursed. It's this is money that was actually going to paying for them to be in hotels in Manhattan. So I think most people would say it's better for this than for that. But that's a federal call. It's a policy decision that they've made. So you shouldn't really worry about that. But at the same time, it's like to be doing this if it's not leading to real significant cadence in removals. Then I'm going to wait for that. Now, if I have confidence that it will, and I think it will eventually, once that happens, then we'll go. And so Kevin Guthrie's ready. I know that they did put out the bids for it. I don't think that they've awarded the bids because we want to make sure that we know kind of what's on the horizon. The cadence is picked up down in South Florida, but we want to make sure that we're doing that. And here's the thing, as the cadence picks up, your capacity effectively expands dramatically because people will be in for a short period of time and then they go, so you can constantly backfill. So if you got a couple thousand spots, it's not like it's the static couple thousand people indefinitely. It's ideally would be you go in and then you get out pretty quickly, and that's our objective. And we remind people, we do have options for you to short circuit that whole process if you're here illegally and simply go home on your own with a ticket. Now you'll be escorted. They're going to make sure you get on the plane, and there will be oversight. You're not going to be able to abscond, but you will be able to return to your home country without having to go through all this. My view on it is, look, if you're here illegally, right? I mean, I'm not saying like everything government does, there's always flaws in it. And you can have a flaw here or there. It's possible that government could honestly believe someone committed some crime or is here illegally when it turns out. So that's why you have this process. But the reality is these people by and large are here illegally. There's not really much of a question on that. So if that's the case, you have an opportunity to kind of short circuit that whole process. And I think that that's better. That's one of the reasons you don't hear me. Like a lot of the narratives that get spewed about Alligator Alcatraz, are debunked. Kevin Guthrie will go up and debunk them, and he'll say, this and that. And I can tell you, it's the only place I've seen where the staff eats the exact same food as the people, that are there for detention and processing. That was not true. Like when I was in active duty, I was down at Gitmo. That was not true with Gitmo. It's not true with others, but it is true there. And so, a lot of this stuff is just being put out because they're trying to create narratives just because that's what they want to do. And they do debunk it, but you don't hear me necessarily going out, getting all sore about it, just simply because, those phony narratives, maybe they will have the intent, the effect of deterring people from going there and choosing this option. And if that ends up having that effect, then that's going to save, I think, taxpayers money. I think it'll be more efficient. It is what it is, but when they're complaining about, the air conditioning being too cold or the subs not being toasted, and I'm just thinking to myself, I mean, what world do we live in that you can go to someone else's country illegally, then demand toasted hoagies? I mean, like, it just doesn't work that way. I mean, I said last week when out there, one of the most successful franchises, Jimmy John's, they didn't even have toasted until they do have them now. But for a long time, they didn't have any, and they did phenomenal, and they made many hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, it's a very successful company, and my kids do like that. It's interesting, like the one thing that my kids will acknowledge is, their dad doesn't steer them wrong on trying new things. Like, I know kind of what they would like, and so they do like that. But they really do like these cheesesteaks at Jersey Mike's, and so it's like that is their thing. And the kids, I can get a big one for all three kids, and they kind of just go on doing it. But I mean, but just seriously, like, those are complaints that are being made. So I think a lot of it is transparently political. They're trying to create narratives. But it's like if some people think that oh my gosh, like, I'd rather not, okay, good, then take the plane ticket and go. I will say this though, I mean, and this is not just true with what we're seeing in Florida with some of the stuff. I think it's true nationwide with some of these Democrats. Now, I know, like, you pretty much need a search warrant to find a Democratic Party in Florida anymore with how poorly they've done. But, it's fine. But put that aside. And I know they're not I know they're not exactly lighting the world on fire nationwide either. But, when I see, it's like, what really motivates you, right? I mean, so, like, people ask me, like, AC, I'm obviously motivated by education, parents' rights, law and order, fighting illegal immigration, fighting the woke, paying down debt, good budgeting. Emergency. I mean, there's certain things that, like, I really, really get passionate about. And the things that they are passionate about have nothing to do with Americans. They are very passionate about allowing people that have come to this country illegally to remain indefinitely, and even running interference for criminal aliens. And so we have angel moms in Florida. I mentioned the Rep Michaels. These Democrats have never done anything to show any type of sympathy with the victims of illegal immigration. They devote all their energy and attention to protesting people who are trying to solve the issue of illegal immigration. And I've just noticed that. I don't see them fighting for the citizens. I see them fighting for their own ideology. And their ideology is not effective or popular. And we may get a good glimpse of that if this guy gets elected mayor of New York City. I can tell you that. Not going to end up well if that happens. But man, this is really what they care. They really care about an open border. They really want people to be able to not have consequences for coming into the country illegally. And I just think it's bizarre that is something that they are so unbelievably passionate about. And it really is putting the people of this country last. And that's what they've continued to do in so many different things that they've embraced. Removing criminal aliens is going to make you more safe. Of course it will. How many times do we want to see examples of illegal aliens released and then they go on to commit additional crimes? Those situations, if you're upset about transporting and you would rather just release, then any crime that happens is on you for doing that. So by getting them in custody, transport to ICE, and then process for removal, you are absolutely saving lives, and you are contributing to public safety. There is just no two ways about it. So releasing people, criminal aliens, does not work. We've seen how that happens in places like Los Angeles. You know, they've released people who had horrible records, who had been deported multiple times. They release them, and then they end up...
And the astronauts aboard the space station will track the autonomous docking of Dragon Endeavour when they enter joint operations. This will happen when the spacecraft enters the approach ellipsoid, which is the invisible boundary stretching 4 by 2 by 2 kilometers that helps us monitor all arriving and departing spacecraft. It's essentially the neighborhood of the International Space Station. Once docked, crew members in both Dragon and aboard the International Space Station will perform a series of leak checks, then work to open the spacecraft's hatch for Crew 11 to float into the space station and begin their stay. We anticipate that the hatch will be opened about an hour and a half after docking occurs, and when they enter the orbital outpost, Crew 11 will be greeted by the rest of their Expedition 73 crew and will come together for some opening remarks. For now, that's going to be all for us today here in Mission Control as the anticipation builds for launch in less than 30.
We anticipate everybody that's going to be on the team to be able to ensure the rule of law. And you know, the thing is people always have opportunities to talk to their reps to try to change different types of legislation if you don't like what the state's doing. Now, you're not going to get anywhere with me, but you can always try that. That's the way the system works. But we've done it the right way. The state's safer as a result. We've got a lot more work to do, I will tell you that. But I really thank everybody who's been part of this. They know that we've got their back. We are going to come back for more pay increases next year. We were happy with what we did, but we know we could have done more. You know, we had to fight. I mean, there was attempts to not only not do the pay increases by Florida Highway Patrol, but even defund some of their body armor and things like that. That was actually proposed by the leadership in the Florida House, and I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like, who told you to do that? No voter elected you to do that. That's just kind of doing it just to try to create dissension within the ranks. And so we were able to get it in a better spot. I'm proud of the success of that, and I know it'll be meaningful for these troopers, but we're not done yet, so stay tuned. Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks for support.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, sir.
It's a long time to be standing up.